The Podcast Republic app wants to make it easy for you to find your favorite podcasts.
I just think everyone who wants to listen to podcasts should be able to favorite their favorite podcasts and listen to them instantly on their favorite devices.
They don't even want to make you pay for the privilege of getting your favorite shows.
I firmly believe this should be free to all citizens of the world at large.
They have a 4.5-star rating with 70,000 reviews on the Google Play Store. But why trust them? They don't sound like this.
Podcast Republic app is available for free on the Google Play Store.
Quick reminder here, folks, want to do it right at the top of the show. We have a crazy dumb thing on offer for the month of February because it's our birth month and it is our favorite holiday on the show, FOURBRUARY. We have decided that if we go up to the $80 tier on our Patreon page, that's a group support level. That's not individual donations. No one has to donate $80.
But if you want to, hey.
There is an $88
We'll figure out some extra special things if you're like, I'll give you $80 personally.
Well, there's an $88 tier. It exists already. You hit it, you know, if you really want to go buck wild. But we are currently, as of the time of this recording, at $54 a month. If we get to 80 in the month of February, we will not only do our special commentary track for all Patreon supporters, no matter if you pledge $2 or $100, everybody gets it. We are going to do a power hour for the first hour of the movie, so it should be pretty stupid in a good way, I hope. So jump over to patreon.com/dissectingthe80s and find your pledge level today. Anybody who pledges at the $5 level instantly gets 3 bonus episodes: The Great Muppet Caper,
Who Framed Roger Rabbit,
and Top Gun. So if you want to hear those episodes, $5 a month, you get them all immediately. Thanks so much for listening to the show. We really appreciate your support. Welcome to Dissecting the 80s. I am Trip Lano, one half of the Mega Podcasting Powers. And with me, as always, is a man who also celebrates his birthday this month.
Ooh.
And who knows that if you're going to bust out of prison, your best bet is probably not Flock of Seagulls John Cryer, the Macho Mandrew.
Andrew Lano, but I will say, loved the outfit.
I had a feeling you were going to like all the outfits in this movie.
Not all. John Cryer's opening outfit I really liked because it had great shoes. And then Lex Luthor wore a coat later that I liked, but it's hit or miss. I find Superman's costume to be okay.
Well, it's FOURBRUARY,
and we watched Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, so you know what that means.
We gotta go back. We gotta go dissect the 80s. It's your terrible special effects. I'm screaming about your terrible special effects.
When the mega powers explode.
I'm talking about the 80s. Oh, yeah.
Great Scott.
Cream of the crop. Oh, yeah.
Mega powers, yeah.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
So Cannon-uary extends one additional week, not necessarily on purpose, but...
Hi, welcome to Dissecting the Canon.
Yeah, this is the Cannon Films podcast, where every other week we talk about a Cannon film. No, just these last 3 episodes. This is the 1987, my birth year, 4th sequel that nobody wanted from Superman.
3rd sequel.
Sorry, yes, 4th installment, not 4th sequel, thank you. 4th installment of Superman that absolutely nobody asked for.
The quest for a plot.
Inexplicably, they get back Superman, Lois Lane, I think Jimmy Olsen, and Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, who was in 1, 2, skipped 3 in favor of Richard Pryor. Stay tuned, by the way. That'll be an episode in the future. I am sure of it. And then hop back in here on part 4.
Yeah, it is people on film.
So I was looking some stuff up about this movie, and we'll get into it in a second. I know we do a lot of digressions lately, but I feel like it helps set things up. But I had YouTube suggest a video for me that was Christopher Reeve on Entertainment Tonight at the time this was released, so back in the 80s. And he's like talking about the movie, and there were 2 things in it that stuck out to me that was like instantaneously like, oh no, big red flag. The first was he went on at length about how on the first couple movies he like would occasionally offer suggestions, but for this movie he was giving them ideas at the script stage and explaining like what he thought
got
Superman
a story
should be.
credit.
Yes, so he came up with this idea, and then someone else wrote it, but he had serious input from the jump on how this movie would take shape. The second one is he told a story of going to Gene Hackman's trailer on the first movie and being like, "Hey, Mr. Hackman, so nice to meet you. Like, what was it that made you want to do this movie?" And Gene Hackman's initial response was, "You mean other than the $2 million check?" And I was like, oh man, if that's how he was feeling about Superman 1, what on earth brought him back for Superman 4? Because there's no way he was getting $2 million for this bad boy.
They're lucky. They probably spent $2 million overall on this movie.
It actually is listed as a $17 million budget, which is astounding to me.
Don't know where it went, other than cocaine.
Up somebody's nose. Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, start off Superman 4. We are padding this runtime with a credit sequence to start. We have the full Superman theme.
Is so good.
It's the only good part of this movie is the Superman theme by John Williams. And they are like, hey, we're going to just let it play. Hey. We got a lot of credits, so let's just hear the whole song.
Hey, can you do an EP remix, John? Cool. Thanks, Johnny boy.
We just want to make this the longest version of your song that's played unbroken with nothing but words on top of it in the history of your entire career. So it's a spaceship. There's a Russian cosmonaut outside the spaceship.
I genuinely, for a second, thought I got a bad rip of this. I was like, oh, did I just sit through 5 minutes of opening to get a bad dub and I have to go find a better one?
Well, there's Russian cosmonaut out there. The Russian cosmonaut gets knocked off the ship. Oh no, he's going to die. Superman shows up, saves him, drags him back to the ship, does a nice little quippy funny line, pushes him back inside and shuts the door.
Glad this comes up later, and it's definitely important to the film.
Yeah, no, super duper important, this whole space interlude. They spend so much time in space in this movie. I think it's just because they were like, well, it's just a black box room that we have to, put space in later, so it's really cheap to film in space.
We paid for a whole day. We're going to shove as much movie in this box as we can.
Also, really quick, I'm not a huge fan of Superman as a character. I just don't find him that interesting.
Boring.
Yeah, exactly. Like the only stories I think that are interesting to tell with Superman are ones where he's been on Earth for a long time and the people that he loves are all dying around him. Otherwise, it's just like a literal Superman who's impervious to everything, more or less. But there's a really great limited comic run that a friend of mine who had been ambivalent about Superman and read this and was like, you got to check this out. It's called Superman Red Sun, and it posits that Superman gets launched from Krypton a couple hours later than his actual origin story or his canonical origin story. And so instead of landing in Kansas, he lands in the middle of Russia. And so he becomes an agent of Cold War era Russia and is the ultimate weapon in Russia taking over the whole world. And the United States is this little
Is that New
tiny...
52?
No, it's its own little. It was it's just one single trade paperback.
Oh,
it's one
like
story.
That. That's that's so much more interesting.
It is, and the coolest part about it is Lex Luthor is part of it, but he's an American and he's fighting back against Russian Superman, and so there's this weird thing where, as an American reader of the book, you're kind of inclined to root for the United States on even a little kernel of a level. And the other thing is Lex Luthor is basically saying, look, you're subjugating the whole world into slavery, basically. You turn them into these Superman automaton people. That's not free will. People deserve free will. And so that's where the fight comes in. And I really, really dug this trade paperback. It's called Superman Red Sun. I highly recommend it out there to anybody to check out. And it's such a small amount of thing. It's, you don't have to read a billion issues of a comic. But anyway, the Russian cosmonauts here. I was like, oh man, I wish I was watching Superman Red Sun because that would be so much more interesting than this story. Although I don't think it was written at the time.
Yeah, probably not. Although that does remind me, tangent. Growing up, we would buy cheap random comics that were clearly supposed to be famous comics, but not quite. They were the mockbusters that they put out now to confuse grandparents.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We had a bunch of them. There was one that was clearly supposed to be Fantastic Four, but it wasn't the Fantastic Four.
I only ever remember buying comics at the used bookstore
Down the
at
beach.
the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they would be like four random comics. But I always thought they were just like the C team of Marvel, like dollar back issue kind of stuff.
I remember the ones that were like, it's wondrous group of 4 people. And there was one where they talked about, like, I remember reading it, they were like, do you remember the time when there was when the Ruskies beat us to the comet and they turned into superheroes instead? And like there was a few panels about that. So maybe that was just like a thing in the 80s.
Yeah, I think that Red Sun is a little bit later, but it's definitely an interesting idea to play with, talking about the political world that you live in. Anyway,
this
I
movie's
forgot to
not
mention,
good, guys.
No, Superman actually speaks Russian here, and it's part of him speaking a couple languages in this movie, which is kind of a weird, interesting thing that doesn't do anything for the story, but just exists.
I think it's just to show that, like, he's not an American hero. Like, yeah. Because later when he goes to the UN, he's like, I don't represent one country. And they're like, you'll need a delegate or you need a
sponsor.
Thank you, a sponsor. And every country raises their hand. And it's like, oh, yeah, he's not really American. He's just a superhero.
Well, it's interesting, though, because, like, the Superman mythos is truth, justice, and the American way. Like, it's right in there.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, I mean, that's...
I don't know much of superhero.
That might not be, like, the ultimate... some DC fan is screaming right now, but, like, truth, justice, and the American way is absolutely a slogan associated with Superman. That may be movies or some bad television or something, but it's definitely a Superman slogan. So he is definitely idealized American, but you are correct. Like, I think the point of it is to make him be a little more citizen of the worldy, given what happens in this movie. But so we go from speaking Russian in space to we're back in Smallville for like 10 seconds. And one of the interesting tidbits I saw on doing some research of this is the set from the original Superman was still available. Like, they never knocked it down. And instead of flying people to Canada and filming it there, they built like a cheap knockoff version in the UK, just because they were like, we're filming in the cheapest area possible, so let's get this over with. It's the same reason why the UN is so obviously not the UN. And it's like one of the world's most recognizable buildings, I would say. Like, yeah. I know what the UN building looks like. I would wager that a lot of people know what the UN building looks like. And when he's walking up to this, you're like, that's not the UN building. I know what the UN building looks like.
I've seen The Rescuers.
Yeah. And that was something that Christopher Reeves commented on, is like, in the first movie, we would absolutely film that in Manhattan, but we were filming this as, cheaply as possible and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, dude, you were signing up for a canon version of this. What did you think was going to happen? It's not like there's no evidence to see what they'd made dozens of movies at this point. Like, they were a player. They made a lot of movies. You knew what they were getting into.
It's just such a bad idea. And I don't know. See, the movie tries to be too many things.
There's a version of this where it's like kind of a comedic take on Superman with the actual Superman people that I think works well, but it's not this. Like, this is a sloppy mess.
That's what I mean. Like, it tries to be 4 different things, and it doesn't accomplish any of them, and just is like an incoherent gobbledygook mess.
And there's so many scenes that just don't seem connected to anything. Like, so we go to Smallville, and Superman gets this little crystal out of his pod, and there's this voiceover from his mother that's like, this crystal carries the last power of Krypton. Once it's gone, all of Krypton will be gone, but if it helps you survive, then nothing is lost, and it's not given in vain, and da-da-da-da-da. And so he takes this crystal, and then he walks outside, and a dude pulls up and is like, well, howdy, Mr. Kent. I'm excited to sell your farm. And he like refuses to sell the farm to a developer, and he's like, no, this should be a farm. Someone should be growing things here. And this guy gives this like semi-long speech about like, nobody wants to work a farm anymore. Blink and there'll be no farms left anywhere, Mr. Kent. And then he leaves. And we never, this doesn't come back. The crystal does, but like, why is this conversation part of this? Like, what is the point of it?
That happened. There's so many things in this movie that are like, why did this have to happen that way? Like,
right. And we'll get to. I have a thing with the crystal that I want to circle back to. So I'm saying it to you as,
was it not kryptonite? Is that not kryptonite?
It's not. It looks like what I thought to be kryptonite, but it's not.
Like, as someone who has enough knowledge of Superman to get by in a conversation. That is what kryptonite looks like in my brain.
Right. I see a glowing green crystal, and I'm like, that's bad for you, Superman. Don't touch it.
Yeah, I was like, you're going to burn yourself or whatever happens.
I should have asked this before, but have you seen any of the other Christopher Reeves Superman movies?
If I have, it's been a very long time.
Yeah, I think I've seen bits and pieces, but even in this trash movie, I can see why people were so attached to him as Superman.
He's very charismatic and dreamy and hunky.
Yeah. And like, of course, this is, the bad version of this, and, it's not a good Superman movie. It's not a good movie at all. But I see how people were so attached to him as Superman even in this crappy version, you can see why people liked him so much.
Yeah. And it also plays into the Hollywood stereotype that glasses equals nerd. Because, like, he is objectively hot.
Yeah.
And then they're like, just part your hair the other way and put on glasses. And everyone thinks you're some schlubby idiot. And I was like, do you not have eyes? Are we not looking at the same person?
So your point is totally valid, and this is like kind of tied into that. But I've made the joke. I'm sure you've made the joke. Everybody's made the joke about how like his disguise being glasses is so stupid. I have a coworker who wears glasses, and recently the other day she was in the kitchen like waiting for her food to heat up and was cleaning her glasses, and she turned around and looked at me, and I like didn't recognize her for a second, and I was like. It's like, have I been wrong all this time about the Superman? Like, I got it like quickly, but it was like, it might work for a split second there. I was like, maybe this is a valid disguise.
It's enough to get you through a hallway, but it's not like you can't survive. Yeah. Like, you're not going to it's not a long-term solution.
The other thing that's really odd on this farm sequence is like, he picks up a baseball and a baseball glove and is like, hey, like there's kind of a funny scene where his crib is broken and Pa Kent apparently told this guy that young Clark had a bad dream and kicked it as a baby and it like splintered the wood. And they're like, oh, he was such a jokester. Like that's kind of a cute little thing.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Then he picks up this baseball and baseball glove and he's like, here, why don't you give this to your grandkids? Like, what are we doing? And then he's like, oh, you know what? Here, grab this bat. Let me pitch you a couple. And then he throws one single pitch, which he whiffs on, and he gets in his truck and drives away. And then Superman hits a baseball to the moon. And I just like, and I knew that this movie ended on the moon. And I was like, oh my God, is there a sequence where he like uses this baseball later? No.
That would have been great. I didn't even think about that.
I know if he had been like almost KO'd and picked up a baseball and like beamed the bad guy in the back of the head or something, it would have been pretty wicked. But also, this old guy, it's like such a dangerous thing he's doing, pitching to anyone, like not just Superman, anyone. When I was in high school, we did a scavenger hunt, and one of the things was like, film yourself hitting a home run. So we went to this little league field, and I kept doing the thing where you like...
The one across from high school?
Yeah. So I used to play little league there, and I was doing that thing where you like throw the ball up and try to swing at it. And I've said this before, I am a terrible baseball player. Like I'm not good at it. So I keep trying. None of my other friends want to take a whack at it. And I was like, all right, well, how about one of you like lob me one and maybe it'll be easier than me trying to like throw it up, get both hands on the bat and swing. And my buddy's like, all right. And so he does like an underhand pitch. It was luckily like a softer baseball.
A gym class softball pitch.
Yeah. It's just the softest little lob. And I think it was actually like a T-ball ball, which is softer than a real baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I hit this directly back at my friend's kid, like in the kidney, like boom, and he went down like a bag of hammers and it's just like rolling around on the ground. And we were like, oh no, this was a huge mistake. And so all I could think of was like, Superman's going to hit a line drive and literally decapitate this man.
He's going to go through his stomach.
Yeah.
Like in Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, there's going to be like a hole in the middle of this man or something.
And instead, he hits a baseball into the sun.
Yeah, and then that's the end of this. Why Clark Kent needed to swing a baseball bat, I don't know. Padding that runtime,
baby. Same reason the damn Twilight vampires had to play baseball.
But at least, isn't that sequence? I've seen two of those movies because
I know of it tangentially.
Well, another podcast I listened to did a commentary track for it. Actually, they did one of their Twilight ones as a Power Hour, which is where I stole the idea from. But as I recall it, the baseball scene is like a way of them getting to show off all their vampire powers without them having to eat people, because it's like Mormon vampires is the whole name of her book.
Yeah, I think it's like they only play baseball during thunderstorms, so no one hears them break the sound barrier.
Yeah, they hit the ball really, really hard and they run really, really fast. It's very stupid. Don't get me wrong. It's incredibly stupid. But the idea being, if you don't have them killing and eating people, there's not a lot of ways to show off vampire powers. So I guess baseball.
Yeah. That's the best way you know, when I think, how do I show off vampire skills? Baseball is how I do it.
Yeah, no, it's the perfect blend of speed, skill,
That
and
scene in
agility.
The Sandlot where Squints rips into someone's throat.
Yeah,
Wendy
like a feral
Peppercorn
monster.
goes right down.
So we go to see Gene Hackman in a like a quarry prison gang kind of deal.
Yeah, what the hell kind of like nonsense is this? That's not how prisons worked in the 80s, I thought.
Right. So John Cryer pulls up in this like ridiculous vehicle and he lures two police or prison guards into the car, and then he starts like fiddling with his Walkman that's actually a remote control, and he like captures them inside this thing and he drives it off a cliff. And I'm like so pumped, right? It's a Cannon movie. We're in a quarry. Like this car is jumping off a quarry cliff.
And it's gonna
Hell
explode.
yes. Yeah. So we get the car, the cops are stuck in it. It hits this thing, it flips over in the air. Boom, cut away before the money shot. Are you kidding me?
You like literally see it touch the ground and it cuts right away to Gene Hackman being like, haha, success. And I was like, no, it wasn't. I didn't see anything.
And then you see like some black smoke and the two prison guards climb up out of the pit, like all soot covered, like cartoons with like practically with like cartoon birds swirling around their heads. Because God forbid we kill a person. Yeah. But like, you're killing them off screen, right? Like, it's not like we're seeing their mangled corpses. Like, blow that car up. This is a Cannon movie. Why am I telling you this?
Yeah, I was so, because as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, this movie is not going to be what I hope it is.
The only explanation I can think of is they just literally didn't get the shot and they didn't have another car.
That makes sense.
Like the explosives didn't go off right or something happened and they didn't have the shot. But I was so disappointed.
See, but like, here's an easy fix for that. Leave the car as is, shoot it blowing up there, and then just add a scene of John Cryer being like, and the grand finale, hit a button on his remote, then it explodes. Like,
yeah,
there are easy solutions that don't require reshoots.
Yeah.
Hire us
Very
to make your movies better. This is around the point where I started to realize, were these special effects good for the time? I don't think they were. And I was like, I don't know much of anything about Superman's mythos. Because I was like, is Lois Lane dating Clark or Superman? Or does she know it's both?
This movie has a version of it where she has like sometimes amnesia, which is really confusing.
He like neuralizes her a few times.
Yeah, he does. That's a great, he basically Men in Black neuralizes her. But we go to like Clark's running to make the subway and he doesn't get on the train and she gets on, Margot Kidder as Lois Lane gets on, who's good, by the way. I like her quite a bit in this movie. The train takes off. The conductor immediately has a heart attack. And then did you notice that they looped the shot of the people on the train station to make it look fuller?
They looped a lot of shots in this movie.
But this one was egregious because I think it was a triple. Because the only reason I noticed is because there was a woman in a very bright yellow coat in the front row. And so it was like, whoosh by. Wait, another woman in a yellow coat? Wait, another woman in a yellow? Oh, it's a loop. They're looping. They had 25 extras and they made it look bigger.
This is why extras aren't allowed to wear flashy clothing.
Yes, exactly. So Superman changes in a phone booth, flies down the tracks.
Apparently this was the first movie to include the phone booth.
Really? That seems crazy.
Yeah, I think I read that. Don't quote me. Have you seen the Henry Cavill Yum Yum Delicious Superman movies? Does he change? Is there like
I saw Man of Steel, which I out and out hated. I never saw Superman Returns. That's Brandon Routh.
Yeah.
So Henry Cavill was Superman for the last two. So I saw Man of Steel, which like literally the third act of that effing movie takes place in an IHOP. I was so mad about the product placement in that movie. Like I'm not even doing that as a bit. I'm gonna shut up after a second. But the third act of that movie is literally Superman and Zod having a fist fight in an IHOP, shortly after, they have a fist fight where the 7-Eleven logo is perfectly placed between them. And it's just like, come on. Marvel was really, really bad about this. They've gotten a little better since. Like
I feel like for them, the logo, it's not big logos like that. It's like he's clearly holding a Gillette razor, puts it down, camera lingers a second too long, but it's not like a glowing neon 7-Eleven sign.
Well, Gillette drove me crazy in the second Avengers movie because not only does Hulk shave with the Gillette razor and like hold the logo to camera, and then the shaving cream can is like tilted just so, and then he and Scarlett, or what's her name? No, Scarlett Johansson. You were
gonna say Scarlett O'Hara.
I almost said Scarlett Johansson. I was like, no, the person. They have like a fight like with a can of shaving cream between them, perfectly tilted to camera. But right after that, it cuts to Captain America and Iron Man having a powwow in the barn, and there is like a 65-inch diagonal Gillette ad from like the 50s, like a tin sign that is the only thing in the barn that's polished. And the big one with Marvel, and I apologize if this ruins things for everybody else, but no matter what condition the car's in, the front logo of them is perfectly shiny. Like the one with Nick Fury where he was getting battered in his car. I don't remember which of the movies it was, but
I think it was like Civil War.
He's like trapped in his car.
Yeah, I think it's Civil War.
There's like 4 shots where that thing comes into frame with the Chevy logo or the Ford logo or whatever it is. I don't even remember, which means it's bad product placement, but it's like directly in the middle of the screen for 4 seconds.
Yeah, Riverdale season 1 was really bad about that. They had a brand deal with CoverGirl or Maybelline, and so there were several sequences where it was like a character was holding a compact awkwardly so that the logo was visible, or like lingering shot on the lipstick. Or then literally one character like named a specific shade of lipstick. And I was like, what are we doing here?
I have less of a beef if it's just like they're using Maybelline, but what you're describing drives me crazy.
Yeah, if you're just going to use if it's organic, I don't mind organic product placement because it's a thing that just like happens in the world.
I would much rather a character sitting around drinking an actual beer and not a Heinzler. Like I would much prefer that.
Yeah. But in last moment like this, but in my favorite moment of that ever was in the new Power Rangers movie, which I was one of 20 people who liked, apparently. I don't know how Elizabeth Banks chews every scene in that movie. She's living her best life. She's the best part of that movie. But apparently the like power crystal, whatever bullshit they needed was underneath a Krispy Kreme. And so
what a weird choice for product placement. Krispy Kreme?
Krispy Kreme.
That's like the third donut chain.
Is it? You think?
Well, I don't know. I guess Dunkin' Donuts is number 1 with a bullet. I don't know if there's another one, but it just seems like a Carl's Jr. level.
I don't know. I feel like Krispy Kreme is what I think of first. But anyways, so someone, the nerdy ranger, tells Elizabeth Banks, the power cell is in the Krispy Kreme, and so for the next 6 minutes of the movie, Elizabeth Banks just goes, "Krispy Kreme, where is this Krispy Kreme?"
Does she like eat a bunch of donuts?
She does later. No, because she's an alien. She's Rita Repulsa. She's an alien, so she doesn't know human stuff. So she doesn't know it's like a thing. So later there's a scene where she's literally standing in a Krispy Kreme, leaning on the counter with like a glazed donut on a napkin in her hand, and she like casually just picks it up and eats it as the like Goldar is fighting the Megazord outside the window.
And she like, ooh, the hot light's on, and then drives Megazord. They like park.
She drives Goldar up.
Yeah, they just like park real quick. Like, hold on, the hot light's on. I need a snack.
I want a dozen of the hot, fresh ones. Don't stinge me.
Yes, and 1 extra on a napkin for eating now.
That's the free one that I'm obligated to get.
Yes, thank you for making it a baker's dozen. Anyway, we should stop talking about other movies and get through this one. So,
why?
In answering your question about whether the effects were good at the time, almost every review that I found from the era was like, no, these effects, even the effects stink in this effects movie.
Ugh. So Margot Kidder kind of looks like a strung out Carrie Fisher, I find.
Yes, a little bit. I buy that.
So the whole
That's
time,
not to downplay her like actual struggles with mental health and stuff later in her life. Like,
no,
not trying to make fun
visually.
of her, but this, yeah. I know. I'm just clarifying so we don't sound like callous assholes.
Yes, I will never be the person to belittle or besmirch mental illness, AO therapy, AO SSRIs. What up, fam? I just, in this movie, I was like, who does she look like? And it looks like Carrie Fisher after a rough couple of days.
Yeah.
And this is where they introduce the second portion of the movie that shows up and disappears, never to be seen again. This child in school.
Quick pin in that. No, he does come back.
And then but like, it's not a character we're supposed to know. It's not a character who remains throughout the film.
Yes, he does. He's later he sets the whole plot in motion when he goes to New York.
But like he's like, I want to write to Superman, and then they like bring him to New York, and there's no resolution. There's no like,
he does the thing.
There's no like, thanks Superman. You. I was right.
Oh,
like,
I guess so.
There's no like,
Yeah,
he goes back to school because he's like, all the kids make fun of me because I believe in you, Superman. There's no like resolution of he goes back to school because he literally gets made fun of.
You want to see where the kid like kicks open the classroom door and is like doing crotch chops, like, how about those nukes, motherfuckers?
No, I want him to kick open the classroom door with a boombox on his shoulder, click play of the Superman theme song, and he's just like, oh, what was that? Y'all thought I was stupid for saying Superman should get rid of all nukes? What just happened?
He like Superman has given him like a single Superman hair that he has under his tongue, and he like flips over the bully's desk and just throws him out a window.
Yeah, like, I don't, obviously not that, but like,
I want that.
I want
that's
that.
a much more entertaining movie.
I want that, but like, there was like so much time was spent being like, he's a pathetic little kid, and like everyone thinks he's lame for thinking Superman can solve this nuclear crisis. So he writes to Superman, then does solve the nuclear crisis, and there's no going back and like acknowledging that happened.
There's no like, we checked that box, but the movie doesn't say it. But also, you skipped one important thing and one stupid thing that I want to point out. So pause for 1 second. The first is, after he stops the train from crashing, Superman goes in to check on the conductor, literally looks at the guy, touches his shoulder, and comes out and is like, he's gonna be fine. What? Did you do X-ray vision on his heart or something? Like, it's yeah, like, I know what it looks like when you do that, and I didn't see you do that, so I'm just like, well, wait a minute. And then he stops and he puts his hand on a firefighter, and I swear to God, this is the actual line in the movie, and he says, I want you to let these citizens know that our subways are still the most safe form of travel. And then he walks away. Like, what? Why is Superman the PSA guy for the MTA? What are we doing?
So it feels like the New York paid for the part of this movie.
Yeah, but they didn't, because it was filmed in London.
I know.
Not even London, like the deep suburbs of the UK.
It reminds me of that episode of 30 Rock when they try and make the horror movie in Connecticut.
Yes. So the other thing that happens is he goes to the Daily Planet where he works, and okay, did you recognize Perry White?
Who was that?
The editor of the Daily Planet who wears the glasses, the older guy. He gets like fired in this scene, and he has the triumphant return. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out who this dude is. It turns out he's like a very famous child actor. He was the youngest person ever nominated for an Oscar, although someone has since beat that.
Oh shit!
He was in the studio system. Like,
yeah,
he got loaned out for his $50 a week salary, even though the studio that loaned him was making like $25,000 a week. Like, real shady bullcrap. But I'm like, who is this guy? And I'm scouring Wikipedia as I'm watching the movie, and I can't figure it out. And I finally jump on IMDb, and I'm scrolling. He played the guy in the one episode of Murder, She Wrote that I've seen because we did it on this podcast.
Oh, the Big Top, Murder to the Big Top?
Yes. He was the older guy. I don't think he was the murderer, but he was like maybe one of the victims, but he was in both parts of the episode, and I was like, oh my gosh, of course it's something stupid that we watched for the podcast. Of course it is. Anyway, Muriel Hemingway, a poster child for nepotism, if there ever was one, she's the granddaughter of Ernest Hemingway.
Got it.
Yeah. Who cannot act her way out of a paper bag.
She reminds me of Kara. I always call her Kara Deviled Eggs because I can never remember how to pronounce her last name.
Divine?
Delevingne.
Yeah.
She has the same sort of like heavy brow, like serious face structure and the same level of acting chops, I find.
Yeah, she's not very good, but the whole deal is a tabloid newspaper has just bought the Daily Planet, and Muriel Hemingway is going to be in charge of it now. And they immediately are like, we should lie on the front page and talk about a crisis. And Superman's like, well, that's not true. And he's like, but it'll sell a lot of papers, kid. And I'm like, all right, look, selling a lot of papers does not necessarily correspond with the newspaper doing well. Newsstand sales, even in the time of this movie being made, were not really that strong of an indicator of a newspaper being healthy and vibrant. What really mattered was advertising. And yes, selling more papers ultimately led to more advertising, but it's a really roundabout way to get there. And oh my God, I can't believe I'm talking about this still, but come on. Every time a newspaper's in a movie, it's the same stupid thing of like, we'll sell a lot of papers. I was like, that doesn't matter. That does not matter. That's not a thing. That's not how this works.
Headlines don't sell papes. Newsies sell papes.
It's like, come on. Like, it's dumb. It's stupid. Like, people cannot possibly think, even in the 80s, when a newspaper cost a quarter and the Sunday edition was 50 cents, would be like, oh yeah, certainly 50 cents at a time is the ideal way to make a lot of money. What? What are you talking about? How many papers are you selling? There's only so many people in Metropolis.
Is Metropolis supposed to be New York too? Or is that Chicago?
One of them is Chicago and one of them is New York.
I think Gotham is New York.
Yeah, because Gotham is an actual nickname for New York.
Yeah.
So I think that Metropolis is Chicago. I could be wildly off, but that's what I think it's supposed to be. But also in like the canon of DC movies, the current ones anyway, they're like 200 yards from each other.
What? Really?
Like, yeah, they're like it's like basically
across the river from each other.
Yeah, it's like Philadelphia and Camden, basically. Which is a reference that's only going to land for some people, but I don't have that good of a grasp of geography.
Garbage next to garbage.
Yeah. Anyway, so to what you said, this they cut to this high school or this elementary school, and they're like, we should write a letter to our congressman. And this kid's like, no, I want to write a letter to Superman. We shouldn't be, afraid of nuclear arms. Let's get rid of all of them.
And I was like, a letter from an elementary school to either party is the same level of usefulness.
Yes. So we cut to Muriel Hemingway straight up wearing David Byrne's suit from that Talking Heads, that amazing Talking Heads concert film that the name of escaped me. Her jacket is a full 10 inches wider than her actual shoulders, like a good 5 inches on either side. She looks like an upside down triangle.
Like, and she's trying to like pose herself on her desk to seem like confident and casual, but also sexy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead. She's not wearing the big suit yet. She's wearing a big suit, but not the big suit. But yes, she is on the desk she like wants to get down with Clark Kent. Like she wants to jump his bones.
Yeah, she totally wants to go to Bone Town with Clark Kent. And Lois keeps being like, hey, lady, don't do that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even seem like jealous interested. It seems like I'm Clark's friend. I know what he's into. It's not you, ma'am.
Precisely. And so she tries to convince him that he should write a column that's like Metropolis After Dark. And he's like, I go to bed at 10:30. And she's like, well, now you're going to bed later than that, sonny boy. And like drawing on his chest with one finger. And he's like, humana. I gotta get out of here.
Yeah, it's very bizarre because Superman as Clark Kent is always like, he like parts his hair the nerdy way and like wears glasses. And he's like, I'm schlubby and I go to bed early.
Your Superman is dangerously close to a Ray Romano.
Deborah.
Why is there so much kryptonite in here?
Ma.
Stop bringing over spaghetti. I got my own wife now. Why is my brother always in my house?
Hey, guys.
There's just too many people here. I'm trying to write sports articles.
Ma, you make good spaghetti.
I'm going to constantly side with my wife or my mother over my wife because that's a good sign of a healthy relationship.
Ray.
Anyway.
We just saved you all 11 seasons of Everybody Loves Raymond.
I think we just did. I think we hit they just recycled those same 6 plots over and over again. It was like Waterworld with Kevin Costner drinking his own pee. That's the plot cycle.
We're going to get, so that's 2 references now to What's Her Face from Everybody Loves Raymond. One was your Acme, working at Acme, listen to her talk story.
Yo, Patricia Eaton. That's right. I forgot. I can't remember what episode that is, but
If we say it a third time, maybe we'll Beetlejuice her onto the show.
I don't know if she even has any 80s credits. I've never looked. But oh boy, Patricia Heaton shilling fried chicken at the Acme is the bane of my existence.
What is it? Chicken Tuesdays?
Cheap Chicken Mondays.
Cheap Chicken Mondays.
Which doesn't even, it's not even like alliterative. Oh, God.
In a British accent, it could be Tuesday.
Hi, I'm Patricia Heaton. Go to hell.
You just whip a knife at a speaker.
Yeah, it was basically my life. I would just like storm into the back and start throwing things.
Cheap Chicken Mondays.
Because like anybody who works a retail job knows that like the soundtrack is very repetitive, but it's worse
I
when
tune
it's...
it out. See, I guess I never heard... So when I worked in Disney, I worked the Rock and Roller Coaster, and it was like only the hit clips version of like 15 Aerosmith songs.
Right. Just
so
the chorus and one verse.
Tuned it out. And then working at a spa, it's just the same. It's just like gentle instrumental music that I always tune out as well. So like I don't even think about it anymore.
No, when I worked at Acme, it was like generic mom rock, like butt rock for mom. So it'd be like Nickelback, like Santana, like no classic rock, but nothing with any edge. So like no Zeppelin, no AC/DC. It would be like, and not
Aerosmith.
Yeah, Aerosmith might be in there, but it'd be like your Bon Jovis, your Santanas, your Beatles. Not that there's anything wrong with that music. Like there's plenty of those bands have songs that I like. But the worst part was the hourly check-in from Patricia goddamn Heaton, who would, hey, it's Patricia Heaton. And like every time introducing yourself, why? Who
Hi,
is
it's me, Patricia Heaton from Everybody Loves Raymond.
First of all, no one knows what she sounds like that much. It could have been anyone. It's just saying they were Patricia Heaton. And second of all, like why would you pay someone for their voice?
Oh, I think it was Christmas. It was the One Magic Christmas, because we talked about the manager making the announcements, and you said it was Patricia Heaton.
Yes, you're probably right. One Magic Christmas, one of my favorite episodes. Anyway, we got to start talking about Superman.
No, we don't. This movie sucks.
We got to get through this movie. So,
there's also a scene where they say this museum is like, we have one lock of Superman's hair, and it's holding
it's
up
not a lock.
1,000-pound
It's a
weight.
single strand.
Oh yeah, a single strand. I don't know where Superman's hair is this long, because as someone whose hair is styled similarly sometimes, his hair is shorter than mine, and I don't think one of my hairs could be long enough to tie around those things.
So it's not actually what's tied there. When Gene Hackman cuts it with bolt cutters, it's like this little clasp. The gold part, the hair is just what's between the gold parts. It's not what's tied in the knot.
Oh.
So because I was thinking the same thing, and when the way he picks it up, I was like,
Superman's got a real bad back hair problem.
Yeah, because it would be like a 2-foot long hair to tie this knot. So we cut to Soups at home, and Margot Kidder comes over, and they're like having this conversation back and forth, and it's like kind of a weird conversation where he needs help from her, but he can't explain the situation to her, and then he's like, you know what? You should just come with me. And he grabs her by the hand and jumps off the building, and she thinks she's plummeting to her death. And then like halfway through, he Supermans it up and saves her. And she remembers that she knows Superman, and they have like a whole conversation. And then he does something. I don't know what.
Well, they fly around the world. They basically ride Soarin' in Disney World or Disneyland.
Yeah.
And there's a moment of like, so in movie, like in Mary Poppins or Bedknobs and Broomsticks, when people fly, it's two people flying for the first time. They're like holding hands and their arms are outstretched. And like, whoa.
Or like Aladdin on the magic carpet, like that sort of magic moment.
I'm thinking more like people flying, not like on something.
Yeah, okay, I follow you.
And so like in this scenario, Superman has the ability to fly and Lois Lane does not. But somehow she's like just holding his wrist like next to him like Peter Pan and Wendy, like, oh, this is fun. And I'm like, what is your core strength like, Margot?
Yeah. She should be underneath him being held with both hands. Mm-hmm. Or in like a papoose.
like Wallace Shawn. Like Wallace Shawn in Princess Bride.
Yeah. Or just like Superman needs to wear a adult-sized baby Bjorn and have Margot Kidder like hop in, and then
or she could saddle him. on his back.
Yeah, that's an option. That's another option. It feels a little more wibbly wobbly. I would prefer the papoose or the baby Bjorn personally. But so this kid's letter comes to the Daily Planet, which is apparently where Superman's fan mail is.
Why does it go there?
Because there's one line, and I'm sure they explain this in the other movies, but apparently Clark Kent is, air quotes, Superman's good friend. He's like he's a gay person in the 70s or 80s, where like,
and they're dating.
This is Aunt Darla and her really great friend Judith, who's lived with her for 17 years. They're really great friends. Welcome, happy Thanksgiving. And like he just is like, oh yes. Or like the other proverbial like thing is I couldn't stop thinking of is like the proverbial girlfriend in Canada, where he's like, oh, I know Superman. No, he can't come to the party or anything because like he's busy. But I know Superman. No, I know him from like another thing. But he's cool. I promise, he's really cool.
I went to a party that like Superman's friend threw, and like we were there together. It was like cool. Like I don't want to bother him, but like I know him.
Yeah. Sometimes I call him. Sometimes
we text more often, really.
Yeah. So this letter comes and he's like, oh, I'm sure it's just a picture request. I'll get it. Muriel Hemingway like snatches it away, sees that this kid is like demanding Superman rid the world of nuclear arms, and is like, oh, I bet we can make Superman the villain of this story. And they do like a splash page of like, Superman denies kid who has simple request to rid world of all nuclear weapons. And they're like, all right, hold on. Simple request. This is not like my puppy is in a tree. Please help. This is like a real actual political problem.
Global political problem.
Yeah. Like Superman does not typically wade into geopolitical nightmares such as this.
Yeah. And so it's this like weird smear campaign, and then so Superman flies to his fortress of solitude, but in his mind?
Yeah.
And he's like, what am I supposed to do? I can't interfere in human affairs. And I was like, what do you call what you've been doing? All you've been doing is interfering in human affairs.
Right. It's like he has this code of he can intervene on the small scale, but not the big scale. Like the idea being you can't change the global path of history, but you can change it on the, the micro level.
Okay. Well, again,
it's dumb.
I'm going to say butterfly effect here.
Yeah, no, agreed. Like if Margot Kidder should have died on that train, what does that mean? Absolutely. You're not wrong. But so they have Jimmy Olsen like shooting a picture of this kid at a hot dog cart, and then Superman just like whooshes into the frame and is like, hello, citizen. Might I join you in walking into the United Nations? And he like walks this kid in who's like, oh my God, it's Superman. Superman's here. Guys, it's Superman.
The kid gets like no dialogue, by the way. Like I thought this kid was going to be important, or like he was going to get kidnapped and like Superman was going to have to, like there was going to be, I thought this kid was going to be crucial to the plot.
Right.
He is not.
Instead what happens is they walk into the lobby of the UN and Superman is like, well, Timmy, do you think you could go wait in the gallery for the rest of the movie and I'll catch up with you in the next movie, maybe? And he's like, sure, Superman. And he goes walking out of the movie forever. And Superman goes to address the UN, where everybody is like splooshing that Superman is there. Like they're all so excited to see Superman.
I mean, he's handsome.
No, he is. It's just so silly. And then the other thing that bothers me, and like, I know this is stupid, but it always feels weird to me when you see UN scenes in movies that they always happen to pick countries with like really colorful clothing. And like traditional Ghanaian clothing is very colorful. And so it's like an accurate representation of Ghana, but it doesn't feel like they were trying to be accurate. It feels like they were just like shoving these people in there. I don't know. It just feels weird to me.
I agree. And again, it's like that scene in The Rescuers when they're all just like wearing Epcot costumes.
Right. Cause it's not like the big scene in Black Panther is based on actual cultures representing a fictional society, but it's done in a sort of a respectful way, whereas this doesn't feel respectful to me. I don't know if you think I'm crazy, but
no, like, I can get behind that. It doesn't feel.
It feels tokeny, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay,
it does. It feels like, well, we got some costumes in storage.
Yeah, and they just stick a couple actors in there. Anyway, Superman gives this big speech, and he's like, "Hey, look, I'm gonna get rid of all nuclear weapons. It's time for this."
Feels like not a thing you can just decide. Like that's not.
Yeah, no.
How do you get everyone to agree to that?
Well, they don't agree because they all start trying to launch nuclear weapons, and he just catches them and takes them into space.
Oh, I thought I like missed an implication that like that's how they were getting rid of them. Like launch them up and I'll collect them.
Oh, I guess that could be it. I got the impression that like some
like
of this
an
was
amnesty gun program.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, hey, if we could realistically implement a plan where Superman comes down and picks up all the nukes and gets rid of them, I'm on board. Just FYI.
Oh yeah, I'm not mad about that. I'm talking about the practicality of such.
Yeah, well, especially because he has like a giant space net and he collects all these.
They're all in
missiles.
a net like tuna fish. It's like that scene in Finding Nemo.
It is. And he just does like a spinning hammer throw like Mrs. Trunchbull and launches this bag full of nukes into the sun, which like
feels like a bad thing.
It doesn't seem good that the sun would get a bunch of nukes thrown into it. Like, I know it's basically...
Mr. Space Science, help me out here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what this would work, but it just doesn't seem good. But the other thing is...
I feel like we'd lose Mars, at the very least.
Something bad happens if you throw, again, a bag full of nuclear weapons into the sun. It just doesn't seem good. Meanwhile, Gene Hackman rounds up 3 like D-list Batman villain guys.
One of them is Jim Broadbent, mister.
No, I mean the characters. Like one of them is like a crooked general. One of them is a fat billionaire. The other one, I don't even remember.
He's on the black market.
But he's like, yeah, you guys are.
He's the manager of a White House black market.
Yes. He's like, look, you guys are these evil dudes. You do all these nuclear weapons. You let me get involved. I got this nuclear man I'm going to create out of this hair. Don't worry about it. Science. You just let me put a hair in one of your missiles and I'll take care of the rest. And they're like, all right. That seems pretty like...
It seems weird, but okay.
Yeah, like, is this like a fetish for you or something? Like, you know what? We're good. We don't need to know. So we cut to Hackman and John Cryer.
What is John Cryer's voice, by the way? Is it supposed to be California?
I think he's supposed to be like a dumb Californian, like Valley Girl style.
Because it kind of reminds me of that stupid SNL sketch, the
Californians.
Yeah, the way he talks is very like, oh.
I was in college during those years, and I really didn't watch SNL in college just because I didn't have DVR and a million other reasons. So I missed that sketch, and so every time they do like a reprisal of it, I'm like, this is really bad. Like, this is so deeply unfunny to me. Like, there's no nostalgic value, and I don't care for it. So it just stinks all the way down for me.
I think it's one of those things like if you know people from California, that's just how they talk.
No, I get the joke. I just don't think it's funny. And the sketch is always like 8 minutes long of them being like, so I took the 405 to the 912 to the 11 to the... And I'm like, I get that they all speak in roads, but make a joke. Just one joke, please.
I know, but I think that joke is a joke to some people.
Please, sir, I want a joke. I want a chuckle, please, sir. Please don't say another road number, please, sir. That's me when I see that sketch. So Hackman gets into a military installation somehow and is wearing like a uniform with like a pocket full of flags and brass. And he like yells at this kid and makes him launch a nuclear missile, even though he's definitely not supposed to. So Superman catches it and throws it into the sun. Immediately. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I skipped the part I wanted to talk about because you started talking about John Cryer. There's a scene with him and John Cryer where they're like fabricating the genesis of Nuclear Man, and it's just a bunch of different sized vials with colored liquid with dry ice dropped in them, so they're bubbling away, and I really did love it so much.
And then they take what I'm pretty sure is like a piece of like a skinned octopus tentacle that's all curled up on itself, and they're like, we're gonna put this this is tissue sample, and I was like, how did we get that?
Yeah, I think it's Gene Hackman's tissue sample because it's his voice later.
Oh, maybe. And then they put scraps of fabric in there, and they're like, don't worry, it'll become a full suit. And it's like, I don't understand this.
Sure, okay. Whatever you say, kids. So they launch this thing into the sun. Superman throws it in the sun. Nuclear Man arrives.
Instantly.
Yes. Played by an actor named, I swear to God, Mark Pillow, who was a Chippendales dancer. So the MO of the Cannon film people comes through again.
Yeah, he looks like a gay go-go dancer but on like for the Tuesday night shift. Like he's not the A squad.
He also kind of reminds me, like from the side anyway, of like a dollar store version of Sting, the musician, not the
I was
wrestler.
gonna say Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, it's it might be
A little Dolphy.
But if it's Dolph Lundgren, it's like the marked down items at the Dollar Tree.
It's the Spirit Halloween.
Yeah. It's the four for $1 items at the Dollar Tree. It's like the leftover Halloween candy that's still there in December. It's those little peanut butter taffies that are wrapped in the brown or the black and orange wax paper.
Oh, I forgot those existed.
Yeah, they're like you get 10 bags of these for $1, and everyone's still like, nah, I'm good.
I'm fine.
You can throw those away. So yes, Mark Pillow, the Chippendales dancer, comes in, and his voice is Gene Hackman's, which is so strange.
I think he I think he had a terrible voice.
That's got to be it. Yes.
Well, or maybe he like just had a very thick accent, like how Arnold Schwarzenegger. They almost dubbed him for the first Terminator, and then they made that joke in Terminator 7. We're still making them guys.
The other thing I thought of was like maybe Gene Hackman got paid twice.
Oh, that's probably, he was like, look, guys, I need to get paid. Otherwise, I'm not coming back to this piece of shit.
They're like, we can't pay you that much as one salary, but if you're willing to do a voice and be 2 characters, we will pay you 2 salaries.
And read 11 lines of dialogue.
Yeah. And they're like, this way it's on the books as 2 different people, and it helps us shovel the money around. So he speaks to Gene Hackman, the nuclear man does. Then he spins John Cryer around, and then we learn that he needs sun power to function, and Gene Hackman uses a reflective piece of jewelry.
He literally takes 2 steps into shadow and collapses. And I was like, this is some Lion King bullshit.
Yes. Also, apparently, in reading about this movie, there was supposed to be a nuclear man who died and then reconstituted and was more powerful, but they cut that entirely for the final released version. So that's why this is so choppy.
Thank God, though. I feel like all you have to do is throw a wool blanket over Nuclear Man, and he's down for the count.
Yeah, assuredly. That would be a very simple solution.
There's also a little moment of Clark in a gym with Lacey, or what's her name? Her actress name?
Muriel Hemingway is the actress.
Muriel Hemingway. And I like and he's in a full sweatsuit, and everyone else is in 80s workout gear. So like underbutt is out, side boob is out, and he's in a full sweatsuit. And I was like, I want more of this idea that Superman has to wear full outfits to the gym whenever he goes. Otherwise people will see he's ripped, and he has to pretend he's weak and doesn't know what he's doing.
I don't think Superman's ripped because it's the 80s. I think he's just super strong in a normal person looking body. But I do love how he has the towel rolled around his neck underneath the sweatshirt, so he looks like he's padded out.
Yeah. And then later he casually tosses what's supposed to be a 300-pound weight at some guy.
Yeah, I did like that very much. Meanwhile, but we then cut to Muriel Hemingway and Margot Kidder are having Superman and Clark Kent over for some sort of dinner date.
This 80s, 90s, 2 dates to the same dance sitcom plot didn't have to be here.
I'll be honest, this is my favorite sequence of the movie though. I agree with you 100%. There's no reason to have literally a Disney sitcom plot of oh my gosh, I forgot something, and run out the door and come back in a different costume. I don't understand why that's here, but Christopher Reeves does a really good job with it. And I like how insane it is that he's jumping out of windows to change and flying around.
He's super, I do appreciate how much he commits, but there's a few moments of teleportation. And as far as I know, that's not one of Superman's abilities.
Right. But yeah, he's for some reason, I guess just to give himself an excuse to leave, as he's being interviewed by Margot Kidder, she's like, oh, I'm roasting a duck for us to have dinner later. And he does X-ray vision, heat vision to make the duck cook faster. But the duck looks raw at the point that he does it. And
it does.
Roasting a duck is a 90-minute endeavor, probably. A chicken takes about an hour. A duck's probably a little bit longer to render all that fat. What are you doing, Margot? You did not put this duck in at an appropriate time for this dinner date. How long does this interview go, do you think?
Maybe an hour, because it feels like it's an interview, but also fun with a friend night.
Yeah, but he uses his heat vision to like cook the duck, at which point she's like, oh my gosh, something's burning. And she runs away to check on it. He comes back in different clothes. She comes out and it's like, oh my gosh, this duck is perfectly roasted. It's like, well, why did you think it smelled like it was burning then? Because that is, if you thought you smelled burning, it was not a perfectly cooked duck. So he also does a real great bit where he knocks over a table and a phone, and he inexplicably picks up the phone receiver and is like, hello? Nobody's there. And puts it on the table. And I was like, you knocked it off the table. What are we doing here?
I have to say, as annoying as it is because he's so handsome and hunky, he does really good for a fumbling nerd with no social skills.
Oh, like I said, I think he's genuinely great as both Clark Kent and Superman. I think he's, even in this trash movie, he is a bright spot.
I wonder, I think it would be interesting to hire two different people, like one to play Clark Kent, one to play Superman.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the charm is that it's just the glasses thing.
Yeah, I guess, but I feel like I want to see like 80s Rick Moranis play Clark Kent.
Okay, who is going to believe that Rick Moranis becomes Clark Kent unless it's like a Mr. Marvel or whatever that character's name is? Shazam?
Oh, Shazam. Mostly I just want to see more Rick Moranis.
Yeah, I don't think people are going to buy that one necessarily. So there's kind of a cool scene where Lex Luthor hacks a panel in what's supposed to be Times Square, I guess, and is like, hey, Superman, don't worry, only you can see what I'm saying here. I'm about to destroy the world. Come and get me.
Yeah, it's basically the Coca-Cola billboard spot. So Superman like jumps into the building and Lex Luthor's there and he's like, well, there's no bomb here because you wouldn't be here if there was. And then Nuclear Man, it's like the lights dim and start flashing and it's like,
by God, that's Nuclear Man's music.
And he comes out and he starts like unzipping his like unitard and Lex Luthor's like, no.
Not that. And he like quickly takes off those little cuffs and drops the bow tie.
Yeah.
He also, there's actually kind of a neat effect where he's like, his feet are so hot, he's literally melting his boot prints into the floor.
I did like that.
So they have a big dumb fight, and it like they end up fighting around the world basically, and like a volcano starts going off in Italy, and it's like 1950s era special effects where it's a miniature with like slow rolling jello pouring over it to be the lava. It's straight up the Blob from 1958 where it's just like slowly oozing, which I kind of like, but also even at the time would have been hokey. Like I like it from a cheesy B movie kind of standpoint, but this is not a, Superman is not a cheesy B movie at this point.
It shouldn't be. But again, it's like soaring over California or soaring around the world. They're like, we're going to fight in... Yeah, he's like, I'm going to set off a volcano. And then Nuclear Man goes into a clearly, completely in shadow volcano crater.
Yes.
And is somehow able to use his powers. So, inconsistent check.
Then they fly back to New York City and Nuclear
and they destroy the Great Wall of China. And
oh, yes, they do.
There was supposed to be a scene where Superman fixes the Great Wall and they were going to like speed it up and look like super fast.
Yeah.
They didn't have the budget for that. So they just took the wall apart brick by brick and then played it in reverse. And they were like, Superman has rebuilding magic.
That's really funny. Nuclear Man grabs the Statue of Liberty and is flying with it, and then Superman like basically does like a basketball steal of it and is like nope and starts doing a fast break the other way.
Well, he throws the Statue of Liberty at Times Square and everyone stops and looks up at it and doesn't move. Like, what are you doing, guys?
I mean, I will say there's a realistic thing of like being paralyzed by fear. That's a thing that happens to people. If the Statue of Liberty came soaring in while I was standing in Times Square, I don't know that I'd initially be like, run. It'd be like, is that the statue? Splat. That's probably the sequence of events. And Cloverfield totally ripped it off later anyway. So, we know that now.
Superman forwarded it first.
So Nuclear Man scratches it with his claws that are like magic and spangly and gives Superman some kind of nuclear disease, basically. And then there's this dramatic moment where Superman's cape comes like tattering down from the sky. It's really very stupid.
It was like hinted at earlier when Gene Hackman was like, he'll be made of radiation and be able to scratch and actually hurt Superman and take him out of commission. And I was like, that's a weird, bleak.
Yeah.
Like, if you really dig down, that's bleak.
Yeah.
And they gave radiation Nuclear Man like long, like drag queen fingernails that grow every time he uses his unclear powers.
Yeah, and then Superman and Clark Kent both disappear, and Lois comes into the office, and Muriel Hemingway has Superman's cape, and they have this big fight, and she steals it from her and comes storming out of the office, and she gets fired, and then the guy's like, you should also fire that Clark Kent. And Muriel Hemingway's like, well, no, hold on a second.
She's like, I'm going to stand up to you, father, and be a good guy, apparently, because this movie is sure.
I do want to jump those bones, so I'm going to have to not fire him, if you don't mind.
So then she runs after Lois Lane, and she's like, hey, sorry about that. Have you heard from Clark?
Yeah. And so she goes to check on him. And so this is the part of the movie that was driving me crazy, because this is so much more interesting if instead of Clark having this magic crystal from the beginning of the movie, he's instead in the throes of radiation sickness, hallucinating even, and he hears his mother's voice being like, this pod is the last vestige of power for all of Krypton, and you could use it one time only. Like the same exact speech, if it comes to him in a fever dream and he has to make his way to Smallville without his powers, it's so much more interesting. And you could have the road trippy part of Lois Lane and Clark Kent in a car, him being like, you have to take me to Smallville, I'm really sick, and the only thing that can help me is there. It's an actually interesting movie.
Yeah, Radiation Man should have been right out the gate and gotten him.
But there's an opportunity for so much more interesting things to happen if you do it that way.
I agree. I think this movie had a lot of opportunities that were squandered.
And that's not even not only does that still take you to Smallville like you wanted, you don't have to have an inconsequential nonsense scene where he's playing baseball for no reason. There's actual stakes at to the scene and having to get there and do the thing.
Yeah, this movie is just full of sequences where they could have been cut, but they just needed a 90-minute runtime.
But that's the thing is I don't even necessarily want you to cut the part where you go to Smallville. I just want you to put it into the movie where it gives some stakes to the movie. Superman has to confess to Lois Lane and trust her with this secret and decide that their relationship, because it's kind of quasi romantic but not really, is no, you have to tell her the truth and you have to make this big confession to her, and then you have to ask her for help and she has to put herself out there to help you. And meanwhile, Nuclear Man could be chasing them, or Nuclear Man could be wreaking havoc.
Well,
and
especially because there's already been a scene in the movie where he's decided to trust her with this information and then neuralized her, but she reacted well to it. So it could have been that moment of hey, we're going to remove this spell.
Right. And then you could even have them listening to the radio where it's this evil man has destroyed another city. Where's Superman? Superman, we need your help. There's a way to put a ticking clock in there to raise the stakes, and then you have an actual movie instead of just an odd collection of scenes that somebody vomited onto a page.
I agree. I very much agree.
But it drives me crazy because it's just such a simple fix. It's literally just taking a scene and moving it from Act 1 to Act 3, and you've made a better movie. All you had to do was a very small change.
Mm-hmm. But I think that would have implied they needed budget for traveling, and they didn't.
Right. So Lex Luthor, there's a really fun scene where he's counting this absurd pile of money that's so big you can't see him behind it.
He's like Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah. And then he's they're we're going to give you a raise. And he's oh no, I'm taking all of everything. You're all fired. Go to hell. And then they're wait a second. And he holds up a $100 bill and has Nuclear Man set it on fire in his hands. And these other three dudes just go running away.
He doesn't respect money. Let's get out of here, gang.
Yeah, exactly. Scooby-Doo feet.
Boing, 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 boing.
So Superman is rapidly aging, but he has the magic crystal that he got for no reason at the beginning of the movie. So he just holds it and is I have the power. And then suddenly is Superman full bore again.
Yeah. And then we cut to Nuclear Man looking at Muriel Hemingway, her photo in the newspaper, and falling in love with her because sure.
So apparently this was part of the thing that got cut. The first Nuclear Man had a bunch of scenes with her, And so they had to like quickly figure it out once they had fired that actor as Nuclear Man and were going with this guy instead. Yeah. This is also the only sequence of the movie I really like. There's some fun effects where like there's a SWAT team van spinning around in the air and people getting tossed around. It's kind of stupid but fun.
Yeah, well, this is where I wrote, what exactly are Nuclear Man's powers? Terrible editing and recycled shots?
Yeah, really. It's a lot of recycled shots in this.
Like, there's a moment where he, like, pushes a policeman over the hood of his police car, and there are other policemen standing in front of it, and then they cut to Nuclear Man and cut back to the police cars, and there's no one there, and the car's all... It's clearly just the cars driving up shot, but in reverse.
Yeah.
And then there's a flash cut to the cars way farther back than they were blowing up.
Yeah.
It's so sloppy.
Yeah, it is very sloppy, but the car explosions were kind of cool.
I like car explosions, but like, don't be sloppy.
No, I'm with you. It's a mess. And then he and Superman start having a fight, and they end up like they fly to the moon, and they're having like a really, really bad pro wrestling fight. Like the way that pro wrestling
in slow motion.
Yes, it's the way pro wrestling is represented in like really bad sitcoms. Like if there's an episode of if there were an episode of like Friends or Seinfeld when they went to a wrestling match, the wrestlers would be doing these like exaggerated slow-mo kicks and punches and throws. And that's what it looks like. Like there's a big scene where Superman knees him in like the midsection, then throws him, and it genuinely looks like half speed, like them walking through the fight.
It's so weird, but gotta pad that runtime, man.
So Nuclear Man gets the upper hand and plants Superman in the sand like John Candy in Summer Rental and just like buries him, although not just up to his neck. He buries him fully. And then he starts attacking the planet, and then Superman does a Jason Voorhees out of his planet, his space grave.
He flies down, picks up Muriel Hemingway, pushes her father away, and flies her into outer space, and somehow she's able to survive in outer space.
That's right. Yes, she doesn't instantly become just like a husk of a human.
Or not be able to breathe at all.
Right.
But then I think somehow Nuclear Man goes into the shadow.
No, Superman... So that's what I'm saying. Superman comes out of the grave like Jason Voorhees and then pushes the moon in front of the sun to create an eclipse and make Nuclear Man lose his powers.
Okay. I missed that.
Yeah. And then Muriel Hemingway, who's magically surviving space, gets like grabbed by Superman, and he spikes Nuclear Man into a nuclear reactor back on Earth where he like blows up, and then suddenly like every light in the city just magically turns on for no reason.
And gets brighter. Like he powers the city now, I guess.
Right. Smash cut to the Daily Planet where Perry White is like taking down the tabloid sign and reestablishing the old school Daily Planet logo, and the guy's like, "What's the meaning of this?" And he's like, "Well, I've written about a lot of hostile takeovers, so I just went out and bought every outstanding share, which makes me the majority shareholder and you the minority one, which means you're fired. We're back to the Daily Planet, everybody." And then there's like hooting and hollering.
Where does he get all this money? Because I feel like that's a lot of money to spend.
He says that he goes around town, and because he has such a stellar reputation as a proper newsman, every bank in town gave him a loan. It's like It's a Wonderful Life George Bailey.
I was going to say, it's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, it really is. He's like, all the banks in town heard about what you were doing, and they don't want that. They want our old Daily Planet back with a guy like me in charge, so now I own it.
Yeah, because they want you to not make any money.
Right. Exactly. Meanwhile, Superman gives a press conference about how like the day is saved and everything's fine now, and Gene Hackman and John Cryer are getting away in this like really ridiculous.
What are they wearing? What are they driving? Why are they on Cousin Eddie?
It's a very cool roadster with that like old school back seat that was like a fold up thing, like a jump seat.
Mm-hmm.
That it's a cool looking car, but they're like getting away, and he's like, "We'll lay low for like 4 years and then come back." And it's like, "Yeah, okay, buddy. You think you're setting up a sequel again, but I promise you're not." And Superman gets underneath their car somehow and lifts it up, which is genuinely impossible.
This movie is too slapsticky.
Yeah,
but it doesn't go full slapstick.
Exactly. It's also not slapsticky enough, which is a weird conundrum, but also the truth.
And he drops John Cryer off in Boys Town, which just sounds like a gay resort. Like,
it's actually a real thing.
I read that, but it doesn't stop the fact that Boys Town sounds like you should play that like Girls Gone Wild steel drums music.
Also, shouldn't be a place run by priests.
I mean,
putting it out there. And then he re-delivers Lex Luthor back to the prison where he was held before. And I'm like, now hold on a minute. We do have due process. You don't just like, it's not just like you fly him back into jail, open the cell, and like, right back where you came from, dummy. It's like, no, like, I get that he was a prison escapee, but additional charges need to be filed.
Yeah, but he needs to be in jail while they're processed.
Because he says, I'll see you in 20 years. And it's like.
And they do.
But he tried to destroy the planet. That's not a 20-year sentence. Leave him in there to rot.
He literally, they was sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. They didn't see each other again for 20 years.
Was it 2007?
6. Oh, maybe it was 19 years, but it was close.
Okay.
Also, John Cryer plays Lex Luthor in the Supergirl TV show.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm sure that's on purpose.
Oh, yeah.
Final thoughts on Superman 4?
It's bad, but like with a cocktail, it'd be fine.
Yeah, it's nonsense. And the part that we didn't really talk about is like there's no attempt made at any point to make it cohesive and form like an actual plot to a movie.
God, no.
It's just random things that happen. And like, yeah, they kind of build to one another, but not really. Like they just sort of stack in that way. So it's really like, it's not I found it really interesting reading about how on multiple lists, this has been listed as like worst movies of all time. And not to sound like a snobbish dickhead, but like, I think y'all need to watch more movies if this is the worst movie you've ever seen, because like,
I mean, it's completely incoherent.
It is, but this is like, I don't think this even cracked the top 10 of the worst movies we've done for this show. Not even worst movies I've seen in my life.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we did another one. It was like a late sequel where it was just complete gobbledygook and incoherent. And I can't remember what it is.
The Police Academy one is like that.
Maybe. It was, no.
But this is like, this is significantly more entertaining to watch than like Parasite 3D.
That's true.
You know, this is more fun than The Purple People Eater, to do a recent one that this is better than. Like I would absolutely watch this again before I watch Purple People Eater, you know? So
That's true.
It's, you know, there are many bad movies out there, but it's just, this one stinks, but is not offensive to me, as opposed to some of the other things we've done where I'm like, well, this is actively offending my sensibilities. Revenge of Michael Myers is probably worse. I'm just scrolling through some old episodes here. Mac and Me is probably
I was
worse.
thinking of Halloween 5.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking of, which isn't one we covered because we can't.
No, we've done Halloween 5. We haven't done Halloween 6.
That's what I'm thinking of 6, where the studio just like ruined it and cut it up completely.
Yeah, I mean, Death Wish 4 is worse than this for sure. To go back to previous FOURBRUARY, just try to scroll back to some other stuff. But anyway, I also didn't care for this. I'm gonna say I don't recommend this just because it's not offensive, but there's just no reason to watch this. There's nothing about this that's going to be really exciting for you or really grab you. I would say you could totally skip this one.
Yeah, it's a skip, but like if you want a particularly bad superhero movie, sure.
Yeah, if you're looking to find a really bad superhero movie that's watchable, this is a good one. We should play everybody's favorite new game show, Cannon or Cannon, with this one. I think I know where we're both going.
Cannon or Cannon.
All right, Cannon or Cannon. You're on the clock, sir.
Cannon.
I'm going to say Cannon.
Yeah. A soft recommend. And
Really?
a hard reject.
You're keeping this bad boy, huh?
Yeah, I don't think it's offensive. I think it's gobbledygook and nonsense, but like I wouldn't immediately change the channel if it was on.
I think Superman should hit this into space with a baseball bat.
Kaboo!
Yeah. Thank you all so much for listening to the show. As we said up top, don't forget to check us out at patreon.com/dissectingthe80s. It's where you can find all our cool rewards tiers, get some bonus episodes, and the Bag of Soup Sentinel, our monthly newsletter, plus some other really fun content. Find us on Facebook at Dissecting the 80s and on Twitter at Dissect the 80s. Feel free to write into our mailbag, or our mailbox rather, with dissectingthe80s@gmail.com. Although if you wanted to ask a question, we might read it on the air. That might be a thing. If we got some reader questions, we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Most importantly, though, if you're looking for a free way to support the show, write a review. Particularly on iTunes is where it helps the most, but if you write it elsewhere, just send us a screenshot and we will read them. I have a few here from the Podcast Republic app that I had not seen until today, so apologize. Some of these go back to September. This is 5 stars from SUNDA. Super fun, thank you. KB, another 5 stars. Hilarious, surprisingly thoughtful takes on somewhat lesser-known 80s media. This one's from Matt, another 5 stars. Love this show. If you love 80s TV and film, check this out. We've got Jonathan Roberts. This podcast is by far my favorite bi-weekly podcast. Thank you, Jonathan. Find a couple movies you've seen and you won't be disappointed. Siblings are some of the best podcasters. I agree. Love the mom impressions. Well, we do too. Thank you, Jonathan.
It's interesting that someone named John Roberts says he loves our mom impression because John Roberts plays Linda on Bob's Burgers.
Oh, that's funny. Maybe it's actually him.
I would die if actual John Roberts,
no offense,
creator of the Christmas tree.
No offense to non-voice actor John Roberts, if that's you. But if you are voice actor John Roberts, hit us up as well. And lastly, from Keith, great podcast. You guys got to do a show about Night of the Comet. Very 80s. Maybe that'll be something down the road for listener request month, which I'm not supposed to talk about yet. But oops, cat's out of the bag. Stay tuned. Thank you all so much for listening to the show. FOURBRUARY continues in 2 weeks with the kind of sort of part 4 thing that we're going to do a little bit of stretching to justify, but it is The Incredible Hulk Returns, which is a television film. So we're going to be diving into the universe of the Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk. I'm excited to see what that looks like, especially in the latter stages when probably the budget wasn't quite up to snuff. So thank you
rarity
again
for our show.
Yes, no, exactly. Not common for us at all. Thank you so much for listening to the show. We really appreciate it. This is the 4th FOURBRUARY? 5th FOURBRUARY?
We started in August, so...
Yes, so 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. This is the 5th FOURBRUARY.
Oh, shit. We did it the first year, right?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. So, assuming that's true, I'm going to scroll through here very quickly.
I think so, because we did the one with the whales in our first year.
Yes, we did. That's right. We did. So, yeah, this is the 5th FOURBRUARY. This is pretty unbelievable that we're on the 10th. We were coming up on the 10th Part 4 sequel. And only at the 10th one are we fudging it a little bit. I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But, yeah, thank you all so much for listening to the show. I have been Trip Lano.
I will always be Andrew Lano.
Until February 25th.
Don't you forget about me. Dissecting the 80s is sponsored by the Podcast Republic app.
Dissecting the 80s is a Chum Some of This production. Things we're gonna cut out in editing.
He puts on the glasses and that's how the world sees him. He takes them off and he's like, Mother. Yeah, Radiation Man should have been right out the gate and gotten him. Is it the fucking Purge? Is it the goddamn Purge? Unless all the Wawas near me are on fire, there is no need for all of this hullabaloo. There are 3 Wawas within a half a mile radius of me.
Yeah, that's the 5th time now.
Well, you're going to actually have something for the outro this time.